Okay, so for now we have set the stage, and we thought it's very important for you to all understand where do we jump from, what's the situation right now, to give you all the insights that we have. Kartika did it with her insights, and Robin. So let's now take the opportunity before we dive into the first discussion with you to really see what are the trends out there. And Luis and me prepared some for you in the next slide. So we tried to come up, we finally found out we could talk about that for 3 hours, but we tried to combine it to the most important on the macro, on the micro level. What is the changing environment? Because right now the world changes, and so we need to change. You as a person, you will see what's happening, and you as an organization. So we will talk about some general trends and also tourism specific trends. So let me give you the picture about the general macro level trends now. So the first picture I prepared for you is just something to dive in. Luis, if you go for the next one. It's just a picture to digest for a moment, because what I feel and what we shared here is we're coming from a very linear, very rigid way of running our economies. And I don't compare it to the COVID place right now, but a lot of people right now talk about resilience, about circularity, about living. And to be honest with you, this is nothing else than nature is showing us since millions of years. So this is what actually nature is doing. Everything there is circular, everything there is living. Let's have a look now how living, how resilient we are. And I think this is the next chart, Luis. Right now, if you want to dive into that a little bit, we have 8% to 9% circularity. So if you look at all the streams, all the materials flow on this planet, we are 8.6% circular. So we are 90% away from resilience if you look at nature. There is a good saying that if you reach 15 to 20% of circularity, you already have a good step forward and you're coming closer to many aspects. But this is very important that we try to think about that concept of circularity, and circularity is at the heart of any kind of political discussion of the EU Green Deal that Patrick introduced to you, at the new laws about plastic that you will notice at your hotels, at your tour operators. This is the topic of circularity, which will extend in the future. If we dive into the next logic, it is the next topic, Luis. What we see here, and this is what we really would like to give to you all, COVID will accelerate the discussion about progress indicators. What is actually progress? What is well-being? We were now being used to measure progress based on financial indicators. But if you only count the financial indicators, you will also count the harming financial indicators. Like, for example, don't blame anyone, but if you talk about smoking industry, obviously, if you count that, it is also counting to the financial indicator, also creating a lot of harm around that. And there are many other examples. So some countries, New Zealand, Scotland, Iceland, already discussing new set of indicators that are going beyond GDP, beyond only financial indicators. So the new future, and it will be the trend, is really about what actually is an indicator that is worthwhile to measure about progress. And what is the effect for you, basically, if this is changing on the worldwide scale, and it pretty much will change also for your country, this will be an obligation to report about non-financial indicators. And this project that we are presenting to you talks a lot about non-financial indicators and how we can enrich that, how we can measure that, and how we can go into that. So this is one trend. The other trend is, I think many people already referred to that. There's a whole political agenda linked to this EU Green Deal, which is associated with, is aligned with many of your source markets. And just to give you an idea, This is a 2030 agenda that is aligned with a restart in Europe, that's aligned with €1 trillion of budget going into this huge transformation. And it's the first time in Europe that sustainability is not a concept anymore. It's an inherited, let's say, strategy. It's a new normal for anything we are doing. So just for you, some indicators, Kartika said it, we are striving for climate neutrality. We are striving for 55% written, signed reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. We are striving within the next 10 years for 25% only agricultural land under organic farming. Why? Because the food system globally is associated to 30% of all the greenhouse gas emissions. So there's a big aspect, circularity is in there, biodiversity is in there. So this is the political agenda of one of your main source markets, and many other will also go into this direction. So whatever you do and what counts on that will support. It will be a wind of change going into that direction. And if you put the sails into that wind of change, pretty sure you will be a good sailor in the future. Right now it's a challenge, but we're talking about the future. And this sums it up basically. So we are moving from the last 30 years. If you are into sustainability like we are, because it's our passion, we see this moving from for a very conventional way of being green. Green means, let's say, a little bit less negative impact. We now have the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, that many of you might know, but there is a tendency that some even don't accept the word sustainability not anymore, because sustain means we are sustaining a certain status. But right now, at this challenging time, also through COVID, because it was in fostering some of the challenges we have that Luis will tackle in a moment, we have to go from sustainability into regeneration. And what is regeneration? Regeneration means going that in the direction that humans do things not only to nature, but as nature. So we play nature, we restore the things that we are doing. You had the really hard time with this oil spill, but I was amazed by your solidarity as Mauritius to act, to restore, and to try to regenerate that impact. And if you think about a hotel or tour operator that works together with agricultural farming practices that are regenerative, you talk about restoring the soil and making the soil able to capture the CO2 that's in the atmosphere. So we need to move into this direction. If we go forward, Luis, on the next. This is a term I would like to make you acquainted with. There is a direction on the worldwide movement in tourism that talks about regenerative tourism. This is a lady I really appreciate, Anna Pollock behind. She really talks that tourism can be the regenerator. And I ask myself, and I ask it to you, why was tourism hit so hard in this crisis? Because it's so interconnected to everyone, to this world. It's a world in a nutshell. You as Mauritius are the world in a nutshell. You have all the challenges that the world has: plastic, climate change, reef conservation. You have it all on this tiny spot. So this is where all the solutions must be created. But it's the other way around. If tourism was hit so hard by this crisis, tourism could also be the best possible blueprint for any kind of sustainability path for the future. And I'm very honest with you, I'm traveling around the world. I've never seen a better DNA, a better sustainability attitude than I experienced with you people on Mauritius, because you have it in your DNA. So I'm counting on you to show the world what Patrick said, how this could look for the future. So the potential effect, just one back, Luis, the potential effect down there is really what I said to you. It's about co-creation. It's not about single tour operator. It's not about single hotels. It's about how can you co-create this kind of movement. It's not about competition anymore. The challenges are too big. Okay, let's go for the last one. I would like to bring for you, because before Luis jumps into it, there's a whole new generation. Some people talked about that, Generation Z. It's 1/3 of the whole world is belonging to this new Generation Z. And that is actually looking for exactly that, living like a local. This is their motto. This is their theme. This is where they are heading for. So if you look at that generation, that's the next slide, Luis, you see that down there, we will share the slides. It's 1/3 of the whole destination. In Asia, it's 28%. In Europe, it's 18%. In Asia, it's 40%. This is the first totally digital generation. This is the first generation that will shape the future, because they are so much interconnected of our social interactivities. Okay. And just one slide, we had many out of that, one slide about what their expectation is. This new generation talks a lot about trying locally produced food as a #1 priority for any kind of destination they are going. And learn about the urban culture, do cultural activities. To shop and do things like that is a little bit less important for them. So this sustainability aspects are in the DNA of your future target group. And this is quite interesting for the next 10, 20 years to position yourself. I will now hand over to Luis to dive more into the more tourism related aspects, but I can really confirm what Robin said here. There's a whole wave, and I've seen you have the best possibilities to shape that for the future. And we hope in the next 5 webinars, we will show you some of the tools that we prepared for you to go into this direction. Luis.
Thank you very much, Andreas. As Andreas was mentioning, and also Robin, there's kind of a new wave coming. There's consumers are changing their consumption patterns, basically. And we're talking about a world where people are looking for new ways of traveling. And this is what I wanted to show you. Here are a selection of emerging global trends that are happening here, starting with one of the points that Robin mentioned about that people are trying to look forward safety and hygiene, for example, as well as including the topic of digital passports. So health will be actually a key priority as consumers are increasingly aware that the risk of being exposed to a large number of people when traveling. So they're looking for open and remote locations as a demand, and also for, let's say, kind of looking for sanitized and low-touch tourism environments. So this is a clear trend that we're seeing all over the world. And we're trying to map some of the opportunities that these trends are could be applied to Mauritius. So we're trying to see that maybe hotels and tourism operators can try to make clear what are their hygiene and safety policies are in place, and as well as to communicate these measures in order to keep customers with these demands. Another big topic, and also linked to the European Green Deal and the new policies that are being set in place, is the European Digital Passport or digital certificate. For the ones that do not know what this is a digital document that will make possible for EU vaccinated persons to travel without restrictions, not only within the EU, but also outside the EU. So this document will be carried by vaccinated persons or those who have tested negative, and also those who have recovered recently from the virus. So we have seen now in the latest trends that this passport is going to start becoming functional on June this year. So it will be interesting how countries, and especially Mauritius, is going to align in order to potentially receive these kinds of tourists with this passport. Also interesting enough is that France is now the first European Union country to begin testing the digital green certificates. So as France being one of the main clients and customers for Mauritius, this is of special importance. Andreas also mentioned about regeneration and regenerative tourism. And this is a big trend now, mainly because tourists are looking to leave the visited location in a better state than it was initially found. So travelers are looking forward not to reduce their negative impacts, but they're also to create a positive impact. As you see in the image top to the right, there's a happy person being completely emotional because he probably picked up the trash from the beach and is actually contributing to make a more healthy environment. Opportunities in Mauritius, it will be to make tourists to become agents of change and involve them in sustainable strategies. For example, maybe we could create products and services that support the cleaning up of natural areas. And of course, one of the big topics is that travelers are looking for creating this emotional connection with cultures and also nature. Moving on, I think for me, this is one of the main ones that could be applied for Mauritius. This is food tourism. Food, as you all know, is one of the best forms to experience and connect with people and cultures and history and traditions. And there's a big demand for these kinds of traveling right now to travelers that are looking for real experiences and demanding, let's say, authenticity when they travel to a specific location. This is particularly important for Mauritius because the country's cuisine is marvelous. It's a blend of African, Chinese, European, and Indian influences. So this will be a great option to explore on how to, for example, make workshops and traveling experiences related to food, or, for example, creating street food tours, for example. This is something that travelers are looking for. I wanted to bring this point of remote work. And I know that before Kartika showed two different scenarios with mentioning that in the upcoming years, there's going to be, let's say, an improvement in terms of traveling. But I also wanted to bring out other sources to mention this McKinsey & Company report that mentions that international tourism is not expected to return to pre-crisis levels until 2024. This is, of course, let's say, a more negative scenario, but it's interesting that people are looking for developing strategies to keep the tourism economy running. So several countries are now on the go for this. And this is related to the remote work tourism and the fact that many people are having, let's say, a feeling of loneliness in several countries, particularly in Europe, where people are in a shutdown and they cannot go outside from their houses. They are developing these mental health problems, as Andreas cited before, that this is one of the key, let's say, elements of the new kinds of tourism that is coming up. So these factors of loneliness and mental health is very important to take into consideration for the opening up of tourism. So as I mentioned here, remote work tourism, a growing number of people are turning out towards the digital nomad lifestyle and trying to work from places that are, let's say, open, and they're looking for nice weather, tropical beaches, forests. And I think that the opportunity for Mauritius would be to adapt hotels and spaces to host these remote workers, and also to think a little bit about the experiences that could match post-working hours for these kinds of tourists. And of course, as I mentioned before, to address the mental health topic. Several countries have been implementing or have been preparing for these kinds of new kinds of tourism. Here we have Barbados that created the welcome stamp. This is a stamp where travelers can pay a fee around $2,000 to have a one-year visa and be able to stay in the country. Costa Rica is also doing this and offering benefits for the travelers to stay for 1 to 2 years in the country, and also being flexible with opening bank accounts, for example, or people can drive with their driver's license for their own countries in these new locations. So key learnings for this will be to untap these kinds of new tourism markets and let's say kind of follow this line of thought if possible. Another big topic is considering that that there is a lockdown and that travelers cannot go to these countries, or foreigners cannot go into the countries to potentially promote national tourism. This is an important option, not only to generate revenue for the tourism industry, but also to support local economies and build resilient communities in the country. So an opportunity for Mauritius would be to engage nationals to discover the natural wonders of Mauritius, to make promotions and bring up affordable prices for nationals, or even make audiovisual and social media campaigns to attract these nationals. So just to mention briefly, Costa Rica launched this campaign. This is a physical campaign that you can see images in the streets, images in Facebook. They have a website where people can actually select like in a menu, the different kinds of activities divided per region. So this is kind of a way to incentivize local tourism to go forward and meet or know these places that they have never seen before. And here they can see affordable prices and also special discounts. So Kartika.
Yes, thank you so much, Andreas and Luis, for the very insightful presentations. And I hope all of our dear participants, you get a lot of insights for the coming days.